cold autumn evening, and as usual, I was biking home after spending the afternoon at my grandparents' house. The route was always the same, about minutes along a well-lit, busy main road. But on the final stretch, I had the habit of taking a shortcut, a narrow trail that cut through the woods and saved me a good 5 minutes. My grandparents always said, "Don't take that trail, stick to the main road." They insisted it was dangerous, that I should avoid it, but, I never really listened. That night the air felt heavier, more damp. Frost covered the ground, making everything slippery, and the cold made my hands freeze even with the thin gloves I wore. I was exhausted and just wanted to get home as quickly as possible. As I reached the entrance of the trail, I saw the lone streetlight that illuminated the start of the path. The light was faint, flickering, almost dying, but I kept going. The rest of the woods was completely dark, the trees forming dense shadows that seemed to swallow everything around me. At first everything seemed normal. The only sounds were my bike tires crunching on the frozen ground and the wind slicing through the silence. But as I continued, I began to feel a strange sensation, like I was being watched. My chest tightened and my breathing became shallow, but I tried to ignore it. It's just the fatigue, I thought. Then, I saw movement ahead. Someone stepped out of the shadows and stood right in the middle of the trail, blocking my way. It was a tall figure, much taller than me, even on my bike. The person wore a long, dark coat, and the hood was pulled low, hiding their face completely. I instinctively stopped pedaling. My heart began to race, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was just another person using the shortcut, like me. Maybe someone coming back from work or some other errand. As I approached, the figure stood completely still. No movement, no sound. When I got closer, the weak light caught their face, and that's when my world stopped. The person's face. It wasn't normal. It wasn't something anyone could forget. Their mouth was slit from ear to ear, forming a grotesque and twisted smile, as if someone had cut it open with a blade. The skin around the cut was uneven, red and raw, as if it had been done recently. They looked straight into my eyes, and at that moment I felt like I was frozen in place. My body wanted to move, but I couldn't. Then the figure spoke. The voice was harsh and unnatural, almost childlike. "Do you want to play with me?" The words were jumbled, barely audible over the sound of the wind. But it was enough to send chills down my spine. I didn't respond, couldn't respond. I was too terrified. The figure began to move toward me. Something inside me snapped. Without thinking, I pushed the pedals as hard as I could and I sped off. The ground was slippery, and the bike swerved beneath me, but I couldn't stop. I could hear the footsteps behind me, gaining on me. They were running now. The sound of their footsteps grew louder, closer. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. My legs burned with the effort, but I knew that if I stopped or fell, they would catch me. The final streetlight appeared ahead, but it seemed so far away. The seconds felt like hours, and for a moment I thought I wouldn't make it. When I finally reached the end of the trail, I jumped off my bike and ran to the garage. I slammed the gate shut with all my strength, and the sound echoed down the silent street. I leaned against the gate, trying to catch my breath, my body shaking uncontrollably. From where I stood, I couldn't see the trail anymore, only the final stretch of road that led up to my street. I stood there, waiting, listening, but there was nothing. No sounds. The silence was deafening. For a moment I thought about peeking through the garage window, but the thought of seeing that face again froze me in place. After what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few minutes, I finally managed to drag myself inside. I left my bike outside, lying on the ground. I told my family what had happened, every detail, but they didn't believe me. They laughed, saying I was just imagining things, that I was tired or spooked by the dark. That night, I lay awake for hours, hearing every little sound in the house, too scared to close my eyes. The image of that face, that grotesque smile, haunted me. Since then, I've never taken the trail again. Now, I always stick to the main road, no matter how tired I am or how much time I lose. But every time I pass the entrance to the trail, my heart starts to race. It's like something is still there, waiting. I don't know what I saw that night or why it followed me, but one thing is for sure, it was real. And to this day, I wonder if that person, or whatever it was, is still out there, lurking in the dark.